Hello everybody, this is Phil York from Phil York Knives, and today I'm going to do a little review on this. And what this is it's a diamond stone or a diamond plate. This is the Atoma 400 diamond plate, and Atoma is the brand. And a diamond plate is basically a sharpening stone. It's a modern sharpening stone, and it's a piece of metal. In this case it's aluminium, and on top you have an array of diamonds, industrial diamonds. This plate is a 400 grit plate, so these are pretty coarse diamonds. This is a starting stone. It's a stone that you would use when you had a very blunt knife and you wanted to take off a lot of material, or you had a chip in your knife that you wanted to sharpen out. This is a sort of knife. Now I'm going to do a little bit something a little bit different, because I've got a neighbour of mine who is a chef, a professional chef, and he was telling me the other day when we were having a barbecue that he doesn't like sharpening. He likes using sharp knives, and to get his knives sharp he uses very coarse stones. He sharpens very quickly, and he actually enjoys a toothy edge. So he was looking for a new stone, and I suggested he try one of these, and that's why the reason I've got this is I bought it for him, and I'm just trying it out a little bit before I pass it on. So I would say, well, firstly let's talk about diamond stones. And this stone is 10 millimeters thick, and it's 75 millimeters wide and 210 millimeters long, and that's an excellent size for sharpening kitchen knives and that sort of thing. Bigger knives, you can sharpen smaller knives on this as well, but if you're sharpening kitchen knives, that's primarily what I'm concerned with, then this is a good size stone. And diamond plates or diamond stones are made by a couple of different companies. The two big ones that come to mind are DMT and Easy Lap. They're two American companies. After looking at all the forums, reading all the sharpening forums, all people who are really into sharpening, I think the consensus is this is a better stone than the stones that those companies offer. And the reason it's better is mainly the longevity. It also sharpens very well, sharpens very uniformly. It lasts longer, that's the main thing. And the way these things wear out is basically the diamonds pull off them. And I've heard a lot of people complain, especially about the DMT stones, that they wear out quite quick. Basically they get to the point where there's not enough diamonds on them to be effective anymore, and you've got to replace them. Now another special thing about this is actually a steel plate bonded with the diamonds on the steel plate, and that's stuck to the aluminium plate underneath. So when this actually does wear out, and these are a fairly long lasting stone, you can actually peel this off, buy a replacement adhesive and re-stick it back on to make replacing a little bit cheaper. So let's get down to business. The reason I suggested this stone to my neighbour is, firstly, they're very fast cutting, and he was saying he doesn't like spending a lot of time. And secondly, they stay flat. So on a normal water stone, you get dishing, you get a hollowing out in your stone. And when it gets to a certain point, you've got to reflatten your stone. That's not a big deal, but he's not a sharpening person, and he doesn't want to be bothered with that. You can use these things dry or wet. I've used them both, and I generally start dry, and then as it starts to clog up a little bit, I'll wash it. You'll probably see me do that a bit in a minute, and then I'll continue sharpening wet. And I don't think there's a lot of difference with the feel of these stones when you do that. And the third thing, which I talked about a little while ago, is this is a long-lasting stone. So basically it's a low maintenance, fast way to get an edge on your knife. I'm going to do a little bit of sharpening just on this fella here. It's a cheap knife, and actually it's fairly sharp already, so this isn't going to take long, but just to give you a feel and just to talk about it a little bit. Now, one thing that I remember when I was watching people sharpen on these stones is the sound. It's a real gritty, grating sound. I used to think to myself, ooh, it sounds horrible. I wonder what it feels like, because a big part of stones is feel. And what I would say is it actually doesn't feel too bad. I'm used to my personal set of stones are Japanese Nanoachoceras, which are a very well regarded stone, cost me a lot of money, and they're supposed to have a very good feel. And I would say, this certainly doesn't feel like them. It's quite a different feel, but it's not a bad feel. Just trying to work up a burr on the first side here. Another thing that you might notice as I'm sharpening here is there's not a lot of loading up. And what loading up is, and as you sharpen a knife, steel comes off. You can see it on the back there. I'll just wipe that off and you'll be able to see that on my finger, hopefully. So all of that steel there. The problem with some stones is that I'm starting to get a burr already along a lot of this edge. Just a couple more, a bit more effort on the heel. A lot of stones have the problem of loading up, so as you sharpen, the stone gets clogged up. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the other side. The stone gets clogged up with all of the filings, or when you mix it with water, it's called swarf, that comes off the knife. And that can affect the cutting performance of a stone. And what I would say with these is, because the diamonds are in an array, so there's like a grid pattern of diamonds with spaces in between, those spaces allow room for all these metal filings to sit between. And so the filings don't clog up. I'll just check for... Okay, so we've got a burr along most of that edge too. Very fast stone. The other thing I'll tell you is I've probably sharpened a dozen knives on this so far. And the first knives that I sharpened were incredibly coarse. This thing was really violent when I first got it, like it just tore metal off a knife. And a lot of people have said, and I found this to be the case, these things settle down over time. So when you first get them, they're going to really rip metal off. And the first knives I did, I compared under a illuminated microscope that I own. I compared the edge of this stone to the edge of my Nano Hechicera 400 chalk and cheese. The Nano Hechicera, you could see an abraded surface, no real lines, it was just sort of cloudy and a bit rough. When I looked at this stone, what it had done to the knife, it was big striations. You could see where the individual grit had torn the metal away. And I would say that if you use the Hechicera as a baseline for a 400 grit stone, this was acting like an 80 grit stone when I first got it. Right at the moment, it's probably acting like a 240 grit stone. And from what I can gather, and this is what this stone's doing, give it another dozen knives or so and it'll start to look a little bit like a 400 stone. The effect of the knife, the speed of the sharpening and the effect of the edge on your knife will become a 400, and they settle down and they stay like that for a long time. So I've got a fairly aggressive burr on this knife. As you would expect, this is a rough stone. I'm just going to do a couple of strops on the stone to try and knock a bit of that burr off. Feels a little bit better. And we'll see how that cuts. I'm not expecting a lot from this. It's going to be a pretty rough edge. Very jagged. It'll cut. You can see it got through a bit of the paper. It was hooking up, hanging up all the time. This is a rough edge. And I don't think this is a suitable edge, but obviously the first thing you do after you sharpen a knife is strop it. Now I found the leather strop was a little bit too fine, so after a bit of experimentation, I think this is a good option. So this is a piece of cardboard. I know in a previous video I talked about doing some videos on poor man strops. Well, this is one of them that I'll do a video on. And this is a piece of cardboard, and onto the cardboard I put this paste, which is Autosol, and it's an aluminium polish. You can, if you're in Australia, pick this up at Bunnings. This tube is about $10. It'll last you a long, long time. You just put it on, put a dollop onto the cardboard, wipe it in with your finger pretty much as thinly as you can, and it takes a couple of hours to dry before you can use it. Now, my leather strops I think are roughly about a 10,000 grit strop. This, I would say, is more like a 1,000 grit strop. And I think this is a pretty good strop. First time to hit your knife after you come off this 400 grit stone. Because like I said, the leather strop, it's just too fine, and the burr pulls off the leather and the diamond grit and everything, and so I think this is a better option. So we'll just give this a couple of strops to refine that edge, get rid of that burr. Shouldn't take but a minute. You can see all that black that's coming off under this, that's metal. It's coming off the edge of this knife. And this will be smoothing that edge out a lot, taking all that burr off and making a much more refined edge. Okay, that's just a little bit of a strop. I expect there to be a big improvement here on the way this thing cuts. And there it is, still hanging up a little bit. I'll give it a little bit more of a strop. A couple of little bits of burr there. Now this particular strop, I would say you'd maybe get about 4 or 5 stropping sessions out of it. They're not a permanent thing, they're just a makeshift thing. They cost you next to nothing to make. I've probably, you know, if you've got cardboard laying around, there's no cost involved there. And that auto sole, you're probably spending, I don't know, 10 cents every time you strop. Let's try that. Okay, that's a much better result. Certainly nothing like a polished edge, but let's have a look and see how that does with a tomato. Now, where these toothy edges really come into their own is things like tomatoes, thin skin. This is quite an old, soft tomato. Things with a very thin skin, very soft, and sometimes a polish edge can slide off these. Lovely. So that's a nice result, getting a nice thin, easy slice off that. So that's certainly a usable edge, and that's what my friend wants. He wants a usable 400 edge. And just visually inspecting that edge, let's wipe a bit of tomato off it. As you'd expect, it's quite a coarse edge. Can't really see what I'm doing, I've got a lot of reflection here, so I'm hoping that's picking up. But it's a very coarse edge. Nothing at all about it says refined, but it's a usable edge. So anyway, so the Atoma 400, I'd say it comes highly recommended. I really like it. If you're a person who likes a toothy edge and you don't like spending much time sharpening your knives, I think it's a great option for you to have in your sharpening lineup. Apparently they last a long time, they cut very fast, they feel quite good, surprisingly good, and when they settle in, as I said, they're very rough and ready when you first get them, but give them a little bit of time and they'll settle in and become a nice 400 grit stone. The finish is coarse, but you know, if you use it as a finishing stone, it's certainly acceptable if you strop it, and you know, I've suggested the way to strop it with my poor man's strop. You can certainly use this knife in the kitchen off a 400 grit finish. What I would do is I would buy another stone, a water stone with some higher grits, and maybe finish it out to 1000, 1200, or if you want, and get a 3 to 5000 for a more polished edge. Anyway, that's it from me, just my thoughts on this stone. That's Phil York from Phil York Knives, and please, if you found this informative, press the like button or subscribe. I've got more videos coming up, some more sharpening videos. Hopefully sometime in the near future I'll get some of my knives up and do some maker reviews on those. And other than that, I'll catch you soon. Bye.